Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning and welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian. I've been filling in for Bill on this Tuesday morning, top of the hour, and it has been already a pretty action-packed hour so far with a lot of great guests, and they're about to get even greater because Igor Volsky from ThinkProgress is here. Hello.
Good morning. Hello from the other side, Sabrina.
Hello from the other side. Igor is, of course, the director of video and contributing editor at ThinkProgress. He is also someone who often sits here in this seat, filling in for Bill as well. And, of course, we've got Peter Ogburn sitting next to Igor, who
Hi, Sabrina.
is still here.
Hi.
Yeah, hasn't left yet.
The disappointment in her voice.
The executive producer.
My goodness.
Peter Ogburn.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hi.
Hi, Igor.
Hi, good morning.
Jamie Benson is running the board. Ray Rogers is screening. Good morning. Screening your calls. And Cyprian Bolding is our video operator. Hi.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that for me.
See?
Cyprian.
Well, here's the thing. The reason that
this
he
is
does
our
that,
thing.
the reason that he does that is because Sabrina forgets his name. So.
No.
I never.
No. I should sue you for libel. That is false.
Well, it would be the
I have
first
never
time.
forgotten Cyprian's name. Basically, it was we have a fill-in video operator.
Yeah.
Neil
Monty.
No,
right?
That's also a Monty Counselor is a different one. Neil Martin.
You remember that?
See? Who's not remembering now? Neil Martin.
I think Neil Martin was the guest.
I've never met Neil. I
Neil, I think, was the guest, not the camera operator.
No.
I'm being dead serious.
No, Cyprian, there's a Neil, right?
Cyprian, has anyone named Neil Martin ever run cameras on this show?
Ha!
Oh, really? Really?
And
I had no idea.
And okay,
What do I know?
so this is exactly what I mean.
Wow.
But no one, but this he did once.
Cyprian, shame
No
on you.
one
You
gave
always
me.
get my back.
Yeah, no one. He did it once. No one gave me his name. So I'm sitting here.
Wait, oh, that's right. That's right.
Who is?
It's also my side chick name too.
No, Cyprian.
All right, it's over. Go home. It's been a great show.
When Bill is away.
Shut it down.
We shut it down.
To be fair, the day that happened, I wasn't here, so I.
You were not, but no one gave me this guy's name. I've never seen him before,
no.
and then
I'm
it's like
sorry.
time to introduce everyone, and I was
sorry.
like, I don't know who that is.
I'm sorry.
And now my eyes are watering because I'm so embarrassed. But see, I've never
Can we
forgotten.
just say-
But like, I've never forgotten Cyprian's name. It was all Neil Martin, who you didn't even know existed.
Let me
you
just
didn't
say.
even know he existed.
Let me just say, first of all, Cyprian put the team on his back this morning. He got TawkrTV back up and running.
TawkrTV's back.
Because we've had some issues with it this morning. Cyprian got it set up.
Well,
Buy
I wasn't
that man a
gonna. I
beer.
wasn't gonna come in if I couldn't be seen by.
That's right. Igor
So
Igor came in
I have
and
some
demanded
standards.
to Cyprian,
Yeah.
get me on the air.
Yeah.
That's right.
Igor's like, everyone needs to see some of this.
Exactly.
Right here.
Exactly.
But so now you should apologize to me.
I'm
Because I have
sorry.
never forgotten Cyprian's name.
Sorry
Wow.
that
And
I
I
made
never
such a
will.
scurrilous
The reason
accusation.
the hi Sabrina he just did randomly because it was funny and then
Yeah.
it is stuck. And Bill
And he
is
should
like,
never
Bill
stop
doesn't
it.
even get that because
I
Bill,
don't. I,
cause
yeah,
Bill
none
sits
of us
sometimes.
do. You're
Obviously,
the only one.
when Bill sometimes sits in the show.
It's an
the
inside.
chair.
It's an inside joke between Sabrina.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of great things to talk to you about. We're gonna get to them in a bit, but first.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. I saved this story just for you, Igor.
Thank
Because I
you.
know what a big Star Wars fan you are.
Oh yes.
Have you bought into the Star Wars hype?
Is this
No,
sarcastic?
I haven't seen a single Star Wars, and I'm
Who
keeping
are
it that
you?
way.
No.
There's a campaign to get me to see this new one that's coming out soon
Can
or
I tell you
something,
something?
but no, I'm holding strong.
Jamie alerted me to a new way of watching the Star Wars movies called, what is it, the machete method?
The machete order.
The machete order. And you watch the movies in sort of a chopped and screwed order so that you get the whole picture and then you're ready for when the new ones come out December
That's
18th.
terrible. Also, I thought you were gonna say like you hold a machete or
But they've been horrible. All the new ones, I understand, have been horrible. Why are
the
we excited
first-
about this one?
The episodes 1 through 3, which
Horrible.
the 3 most recent ones are not
They're not good, but
Not
4 or
good.
5, the classics. You
But
can't
this
even
machete order,
comment.
you leave out the
Is
worst
that what
one,
you're-
which is episode 1. Well, here's the piece.
Oh.
Here's the piece, because I know Igor is so anti-Star Wars. The new
Yeah,
one comes out
we're
December
wasting our
18th.
time.
And what happens to it after it's out of the theaters? Stars has bought the rights to show it on their movie channel, which means it's going to go on Netflix in Canada. Not here not here in America. So Igor, you still will have an
Yes.
excuse as to why you can't watch it.
How did
Now,
Igor's
this is
not
all going
behind
to turn
this?
into this is all going to turn into a big battle, you see, because Disney has their own on-demand service that they're trying to get up and
battle
off the
between
ground.
good and
And
evil.
this owns, and Disney owns the Star Wars movies now. So eventually, they're going to make it onto the Disney streaming service. But for now, if you're in Canada,
Well,
you'll be
how
able to
many
watch
people are going to move to Canada now? You know, we say if it's a bad president, we don't like him, move to Canada.
Canada?
The timing's perfect.
This is
That's when it's going to be up.
this is the answer to all
Will you
of this
go?
country's
Will you go see the new
problems.
Star Wars movie with me? You should
I'll
come.
consider it. I'll consider it. We'll see.
I'll take that as-
consider
Economy is
it. I'll think
collapsing,
about
move
it.
to
I'll
Canada,
take that
they've
as a
got
maybe.
Star Wars.
I'll take
That's
that as
it.
a maybe. How about this? Uber is trying out a new service. This is in Eversham Township, New Jersey, which
Oh,
is a little
my
bit.
home state.
There you
Yes.
go. This is apparently a little bit outside of Philadelphia.
No, not, but you know.
According to this story, it's a little outside of Philadelphia. This is the story from Esquire magazine, which comes from the New York Times. They link back to that story. But here's the deal. They partnered with the township to offer free rides from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day to drunk people. If you are drunk,
So bad
you
for those
can get
drivers.
a free Uber ride. They're saying don't drive home.
So the qualifications be that you have to be drunk on New Year's Eve.
I guess
'Cause
that.
that doesn't seem too
I guess
hard
they're not
to
gonna.
achieve.
They're not gonna give you any kind of like DUI,
Breathalyzer
right? Like if you're
thing.
not drunk, you can probably still skate with a free ride from them.
Just,
But
like,
their
wobble
point
around.
is, you know, we don't want you to try and drive home drunk. We don't want you to try and
But
like.
only in that one part of New Jersey?
That's it. Well, this is
Why do they
That's the part of New Jersey that cares.
Yeah, apparently so. Apparently so.
What a Christie presidency looks like.
And-
Horrifying.
And how about Barney Frank? Barney Frank is out promoting a documentary based on him called Compared to What? The Improbable Journey of Barney Frank. And he stopped by Gawker last week, and he talked about his love of marijuana. He loves weed.
And nobody's surprised.
Wait,
He
who does?
loves Barney Frank, former Congressman
I heard
Barney
I
Frank.
heard something else. I heard Al Franken was going to start a problem here.
Oh, wow.
No, Barney Frank.
Not Al Franken.
Franken.
Although I wouldn't be surprised about
No.
that one either. But
Clarifying.
the thing is, Barney Frank says he can't smoke. He doesn't like smoking. So he goes with edibles. He loves pot edibles.
Just brownies on
brownie
brownies.
up.
He should
and
have his
a
own
cookie.
Frank cookie, the Barney cookie or
The
something.
Barney cookie.
Barney's smart.
I get high with Barney
the
Frank.
Barney
Yeah.
brownie.
That'd be
The
fun.
Barney brownie.
The Barney brownie. You're onto something.
You heard it here
You should
first.
move to Colorado.
That's
Open
totally
up
onto
that
something.
business now.
Yeah,
And
so there you go. Get high with Barney Frank. Just don't try and get the joint.
Speaking of Colorado,
Yes.
look at that
Oh,
segue.
the segue. Boy, oh boy.
This is why I sit
Look at
here.
this. Did you stretch before you? You don't want to pull a hammy with that stretch. Oh boy. Speaking of Colorado.
Republican presidential candidate.
Here we go. Here we go.
Jeb Bush is in all kinds of trouble depending on what you read. If you know, I mean, here's the thing. Because I want to talk to you about this, Igor. I was sort of talking this a little bit with Arthur, but, really want to delve into a little further. There's been a lot of attention around the fact that he does not have a commanding lead. He's been unable to respond to Donald Trump. Marco Rubio is rising as a viable alternative, even if ever so slightly in the polls. I mean, they're only two digits apart in some of these polls. And donors are getting anxious. That's always going to be the story. He should drop out and back Marco Rubio and, call it a day is what some actual opinion pieces have even said, both from the left and the right. How much trouble is he really in?
I don't buy into this notion that Jeb Bush, with $100 million in the bank, with a lot of ability, I think, if you look at the field as a whole, to actually be president, is in this great deal of trouble. And here's why. I really do believe that his argument of saying, if you look at the polls back in 2012, back in 2008, people like Rudy Giuliani were up, people like Michelle Bachmann, and none of those folks became president because at the end of the day, when you go into the voting booth, can you really vote for Donald Trump? Do you really believe that Donald Trump could govern the country? Or Ben Carson, for that matter, who, as you guys were talking about, doesn't seem to know anything about anything, really, outside of brain surgery. And so I feel like when it comes to actually casting ballots, people, as much as they want a shiny new person who's not part of the establishment, are not going to go with Trump or Carson.
Breaking news just popped at the top of the hour. A new CBS New York Times poll just came out.
Ooh.
Ben Carson is now leading Donald Trump nationwide. Nationwide.
Woo.
Yeah,
No
it's 26
way.
to 22 with Donald Trump's in second place. Rubio is in third.
This calls for some Lindsey Graham.
That's what we need. A dose of
The
Lindsey.
segues today. The segues today, man, it's just masterful.
Because Lindsey Graham, is not even registering in the polls. And he had something to say about the two GOP frontrunners. I mean, it's a good segue because you just brought this up. And I don't make these up. I work hard on these. And here is what the great senator of South Carolina had to say.
Following up on the Ben Carson interview yesterday, did you have you stabbed anybody or tried to
Or
stab
tried
anybody in your
to.
life?
What's today? On our side, you got the number 2 guy tried to kill somebody at 14. And the number 1 guy's high energy and crazy as hell. How am I losing to these people?
How is he losing?
He had such a great performance at the last undercard debate that I'm a little disappointed that his poll numbers haven't seen a bounce. I mean, we're going to drink more in my administration is kind of a classic line.
Even in the first undercard debate, he came with a lot of one-liners. He was the one who was armed and ready to go and try to stand out, try to garner headlines. But there's just been no traction for his candidacy. And I mean, I can only imagine, he's viewed as of the Senate in this moment.
I guess.
I mean, I don't think that he would be competitive even without these outsiders. I don't think if it was like him, Jeb, Rubio, Kasich, Christie, that Lindsey Graham would be the front runner necessarily either. But I think he would have gotten a little more traction. I mean, even in South Carolina, his home state.
See, to me, the fact that these numbers, I mean, Lindsey Graham aside, the fact that these numbers are so fickle, that it's Trump and then it's Carson and Rubio's suddenly in third,
jumped
and
to
Fiorina jumped. And nothing has really happened. And it's so fickle says to me that none of this matters. It's who you hear. It's who people talk about. It's not actually who you think would be president, and I think that person is still probably in the minds of Republicans someone like Bush, someone like Rubio. That's why I think it's a little worrisome now when you see the numbers, but down the road, I think these folks will be fine.
You know, that's part of when we're going back to Jeb briefly. Someone like Rubio, though, seems to be what they're worried about. I mean, they keep throwing out these shots at Mark Rubio. Now, what you said was, I can't imagine voters actually think they're going to go vote for Donald Trump. So maybe they'll go back to Jeb.
Or Rubio.
But that's is that not then the threat that
I think
Jeb
they
faces?
should be worried about Rubio from day one, and I'm sure they were. He's a younger person. He has a much stronger Latino connection. Those are things that, you know, Jeb has kind of prized as something that would make him appeal to this new base of voters that Republicans are trying to attract. The question is, are people going to want to vote for a guy who hasn't been around for a long time, who doesn't have a lot of experience, who hasn't really done much of anything in the Senate, who happens to hate the Senate?
Who hates it.
Apparently.
Who has basically quit it openly.
Yeah, Jeb Bush for a Republican, has a lot of experience, was a semi-successful governor, depending on who you ask, especially if you ask conservatives, they think he was successful in that state. So when the conversation turns to those core qualifications, not who is the best one-liner in a debate, I still think this is Jeb Bush's race.
I do too, and I actually, I don't buy into the hype that this do or die for him. I think tomorrow is a big night. I think the debate is a big night only because he needs to telegraph to donors, don't jump camps and buy into the media hype and start donating to Marco Rubio instead of me. I'm still in it, but we'll talk about that and a lot more after the break. Igor Volsky is, of course, staying with us, so keep on watching the Bill Press Show. Listen, guys, I'm doing my best. The Bill Press Show.
She's doing her best.
Slip of the tongue. Sorry. Slip of the tongue. We're going to be back because I clearly can't speak anymore.
Like politics? Then like The Bill Press Show on Facebook. This is The Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use, which is a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian, and we were talking with my friend Igor Volsky before the break about all things 2016. But, you know, I really want to switch gears because we've done a lot of the election talk this morning, and, you know, you have been doing some great videos over at ThinkProgress. Sometimes he eats pie, sometimes he eats cake. I mean, there's a lot happening.
And sometimes I drink wine.
And, you know, I still have not been invited to be part of any of these, but we're just going to let that slide for now. Just throwing that out there. But, you know, you're working on an important video right now because, you know, we have this tendency to talk about mass shootings when they happen, talk about gun violence, and then move on. And that's happened yet again after the last shooting at a community college in Oregon, which was just a couple weeks ago. And, you know, we talked about for maybe a day or two. And again, we have forgotten until the next one. So can you tell me a bit about this video that you are creating on preventing mass shootings?
And when we discuss these mass shootings, the conversation is, well, can we do something about gun safety? Can we do something about mental health funding? And those two arguments get really bogged down and we get nothing done. And so there's a lecturer out in Yale who, after this UCC shooting, had a different idea. He said to himself, you know, there's a lot of different suicide hotlines that you can call if you want to kill yourself, but there's no such mechanism if you want to kill somebody else. And so he created one of the first homicide hotlines.
Wow.
And the idea is, if you're thinking about committing a mass shooting or going out and seeking revenge against somebody else, which is what a lot of these shootings are based on, folks seeking revenge for those who have wronged them, then there should be an outlet for you. So one of those outlets is a hotline. Another one is a system he created called the non-justice system, which lets you kind of role play out by interrogating and going through this fake courtroom system, interrogating the person who has wronged you and kind of seeking justice in this therapeutic way, letting that aggression out and overcoming whatever has wronged you in a non-violent manner. And so he has developed a whole system and a whole approach to kind of give folks an outlet for that anger that's not violent.
That's fascinating. I mean, I think that you're right. He's right to say that there isn't really something that someone can do in the moment, in that initial moment where you are thinking about it, you might be reluctant. And it's interesting because in the Columbine shooting, in fact, of the two shooters, the younger shooter, who's only a year younger, Dylan, versus Eric Harris, who's the older one, he was more reluctant. I mean, he actually shot a lot less people.
And by the way, his website is savingkane.org. Savingkane.org.
That's great to know.
Great idea.
Igor Volsky, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure. And don't forget to follow him on ThinkProgress.org and keep on watching The Bill Press Show. We will be back after this break.
This is The Bill Press Show.
have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Good morning and welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian and filling in for Bill on this Tuesday morning. Who has left us for Best Coast, West Coast?
Yeah, left coast.
I'm actually from the East Coast, so I'm not exactly of the opinion that is the best coast, but it rhymes. So we are actually joined by Gabe Debenedetti from Politico now. Hello, good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. National political reporter, and you can follow him on Twitter at @Debenedetti, which is long, so I won't spell it, but I will leave it to you guys to figure out back at home. And I'm excited. I haven't had you on one I've been hosting before.
Nope, this is my first time in studio.
And first time in studio.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I apologize for Peter
The
Ogburn.
staff in here is a little interesting.
I mean, yeah.
I should point out that during the break...
Don't you dare.
Never mind, I won't say it. I'm not going to say it.
No, wait.
I won't say it. Never mind. I won't say it. He doesn't want me to say it. I won't say it. I won't say it.
That is like a cardinal rule that you've broken. You can't preview something that's like funny.
He said I couldn't.
No,
I shouldn't.
have no idea what's going on. So
Something has happened between Peter and Jamie, and we don't know what it is. It happened in the break, and this is why I apologize, because these guys are literally the worst.
End of the show.
End of the show. Let's go home. It's nice having you on. No.
Great.
Okay, so Gabe, you have been following Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, it's true.
Stop.
Sorry.
See, this is what the problem is with radio, is people can just like be silly, and so then we break out into silliness.
This is my fault. This is my fault.
And Hillary Clinton, of course, Democratic frontrunner.
Yeah.
I feel like especially, I didn't really have many doubts over the summer, even though there has been a lot of talk around the rise of Bernie Sanders. But now after October, the idea is, she's back to being the presumptive nominee.
Right.
She was in Iowa. Big dinner.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell that this has been a really good stretch for them. They agree with your assessment that, like, okay, we're back. So she had the good showing at the debate. Joe Biden decided not to run. This wasn't as much of a factor, but both Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee dropped out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just much clearer. Then she did pretty well in the Benghazi hearing. They've been raising a lot of money. Bill Clinton's back on the stump. All this stuff is sort of just like come together for her.
Everything's coming up Hillary.
Yeah. So there's a lot of time before voting.
Right, come on.
I can't take you seriously anymore.
No. I think he's right.
He's right.
But and then at the Iowa Jefferson Jackson dinner over the weekend, she had this strong showing that sort of she didn't make the most news in her speech. She sort of said what she always does, but her Iowa organization really stepped up, and she made clear like what a big grassroots group she has there. So they're feeling pretty confident right now.
They're feeling confident, and she has been, because this kind of has come up in recent days, sort of a bit of a back and forth between her and Bernie Sanders on a number of issues. Now she has been critical of him on gun control. First sort of thinly veiled that he hadn't voted for a number of measures, including the Brady bill, originally expanding background checks and other measures to protect the gun industry from litigation that he supported. And then, of course, he in the debate was saying that he has evolved on some of these issues, and also at the same time was trying to say, I'm from a rural state, don't deal with them. But then he, at this dinner that you mentioned, Iowa, was pretty aggressive, more aggressive than he has been.
Right.
What did you make of that?
Well, he's starting to run a campaign that's a little bit more just, what we're used to seeing. He always says he's not going to run a negative campaign in any way. He's not going to go after Hillary's character. He's not going to say she's untrustworthy, just look at her emails.
Mm-hmm.
But, what he's willing to do is point out the contrasts in where they stand. And so what he's trying to get out there is saying, like, she's a political opportunist. He said at this dinner, I'm going to govern based on, I don't remember what the exact line was, but it was a lot like what Obama said in 2007, principles, not polls. The, assumption or the implication being, what Hillary does, not that.
Yeah, and, I think he also, one point of difference that he highlighted with her, she was on Rachel Maddow in an interview on Friday night. She's talking about the Defense of Marriage Act and trying to at least explain Bill Clinton's signing of that legislation, which of course now, the Supreme Court has reversed, and, same-sex marriage is legal nationwide. Mm-hmm. She has been criticized for having a late evolution on this subject, but she said that Bill Clinton signed as a defensive action, that there was a real threat to the Constitution that could have been amended. Bernie Sanders has likened that to rewriting history. That's not how he remembers it. Is this an actual point of contention? I mean, is there a real, and also, are people buying her rationale that she offered?
Yeah, some people are buying it. I think the question, one of the interesting things to watch right now is that the conversation at this point is almost a meta conversation over what they're really talking about. I think it's more of a principles question because, Bernie Sanders himself has also evolved on the issue of gay marriage and gay rights. But the question of, like, he's basically just saying, Hillary is making up these retroactive excuses for just something that, was a reality in the 90s that is not a reality now. And And that's a problem that she's going to have, moving forward, and that she's already had with having to explain away many of the things that happened under her husband's presidency. So there's this awkward dance that they're both going through right now.
Yeah, criminal justice is another one of them. She's headed to Atlanta on Friday, having events courting African-American voters. I suspect we'll be seeing some discussion. She's come out for a lot of proposals, body cameras for police, obviously reducing mass incarceration. Also, don't forget to call us with your own thoughts on Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Gabe, so, you're headed to New Hampshire, I believe, tonight. You've been on the trail with her. Anything to expect on this trip, or is this just at this point, she's had a good time continuing with her usual stump speech? No real need for any changes?
Well, I don't think we can expect to see any drastic changes, especially after the weekend. They had a big finance summit in New York where all her top fundraisers and donors were there. They got a lot of money. They're pretty happy. Everyone seems to be saying, all right, stay the course. Don't make any mistakes in the next 3 months. But New Hampshire in particular is pretty interesting because that's the place where, Sanders has given her the most trouble. He's still ahead in most polls, but it's getting closer. So it'll be interesting to see how she handles it. She's not just hanging out in southern New Hampshire, which is where most of the voters are. She's going all the way north, which is where there are pretty much no Democratic voters, but there are some. So she's really hitting all the stops trying to prove, I really care about this state.
I was curious if it has anything to do with environmental policy, because big piece of news yesterday is that Kelly Ayotte, of course, senator from New Hampshire, facing a really tough re-election battle, and the governor, Maggie Hassan, has decided to challenge her, which is even more problematic. Popular governor going against a Republican incumbent who's vulnerable. She came out for the president's Clean Power Plan. She's in terms of sitting Republicans in Congress, that's a really rare move. But I think New Hampshire in particular, very concerned with climate. Hillary Clinton on Keystone, certainly late in coming out against that, hasn't gone as far even with some of the climate change rhetoric that environmentalists would like to see. I mean, is that part of what's happening in New Hampshire, or is it just a broader picture in your view?
That's certainly a big issue in New Hampshire. And, her Keystone evolution, if you want to call it that, or her, long labored trying to figure out where she stands on this thing, was really highlighted in New Hampshire over and over, because every single time she had a town hall for months, people would bother her about it. And she finally broke the news that she is against Keystone in Iowa, but New Hampshire was really the center of all this. And she has rolled out a lot of climate proposals, a lot of environmental proposals in New Hampshire. There's no question that it is a central issue there. I wouldn't expect her to roll out anything new on that front today or tomorrow, but, I don't know. It's possible.
It's definitely interesting to see. I mean, I do think actually, one of the reasons why she focuses a lot on Bernie Sanders' gun control record, I should say, in that state is because, they too tend to be a little more pragmatic about the issue of gun violence, how to reduce it, supporting background checks. Kelly Ayotte was, for example, confronted quite aggressively when she voted against that, and this was 2 years before she was even facing this current re-election battle. Let's take a short break, and then we'll be back with Gabe Debenedetti. So keep on watching the Bill Press Show, and we'll be back with plenty more.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is why you took a second job. While you taught yourself how to fix the plumbing. While you'll do whatever it takes to keep your home. And that is why we want to help. We are making home affordable, a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE today.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
He's not running for president, but he will shake hands and kiss babies. It's the Bill Press Show, your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election.
Wow, I didn't know that Bill Press is kissing babies and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He's very into that. He gets very into politics.
Well,
very
we're back,
enthusiastic.
We're back from our break. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian. We're sitting here with Gabe Debenedetti, national political reporter at Politico. And we were talking about Hillary Clinton. And, of course, she's had a great month, great stretch. A lot of these sort of doubts that were being cast around her candidacy, at least being put to rest for now. I'm always curious about this and the kind of ebbs and flows of the campaign. You know, the email controversy, I suspect we haven't heard the last of it.
Sure.
And Republicans will certainly try to continue with some of the leaks that they've made thus far. But have they lost some of their credibility after this Benghazi hearing? Do you see there being, another moment where there's an email story and suddenly the tide turns again against her?
Well, the thing to remember about the emails is that we're going to get a release of like hundreds or thousands of her emails every single month between now and Iowa.
Slow torture.
Yeah, so the story's not going anywhere, which is like really her worst nightmare, but it's the reality. The Republicans did a good job of not until really late in the Benghazi night, the night of her testimony, tying the emails to the Benghazi issue because they were really worried that if she performed well, she would be able to just be like, okay, both of those issues are off the table now.
Yeah.
So, by not getting into the emails until pretty late at night, they did a good job of ensuring that the emails were still around if they needed to bug her about them, and they will.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I just, I know I'm not trying to, create some kind of narrative, but that's the whole thing about the media narrative is that it'll, right now, Hillary's on top of the world.
Totally.
I feel like, a week from now,
all it's going to take is like an FBI indictment or something like that, which could never happen, right?
Right. But it's like, one thing about that runs counter to maybe something she said in the past or
that's right.
will potentially suddenly, I feel like, crop up a whole new round of stories.
I mean, the reality is that the narrative is not going to be, hey, look at Hillary's good stretch for 3 more months. Like, something's going to happen. And whether it's the email story or, Sanders catching fire again or, like, O'Malley going to 5% or 2% or whatever he is.
He'd wish for 5%.
Right, yeah, 2%.
There was a point during, especially in the late summer, just a couple months ago, when the campaign and a call with reporters was kind of telegraphing just saying outright that there's a chance she doesn't win Iowa and New Hampshire. I mean, that was something that they actually said, kind of lowering expectations. But was that just, around a lot of the hype around Bernie, knowing that they're having a little bit of a tough time, just trying to set expectations, though? Do they genuinely believe that, though?
Yes and no. I mean, for one thing you can say about this campaign is that it's been pretty bad at setting expectations because the very fact that she could lose 2 states and win 47 or 48, like, that would still be unbelievably good for a non-incumbent. It would be unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, they might lose Iowa. If they're going to lose 2 states at this point, it looks like it would be Iowa and New Hampshire. So those are whiter states that tend to like people like Bernie Sanders. So they are preparing for that possibility. Now, it doesn't look like she's going to lose both of those states. She's still winning in Iowa overall and creeping back in New Hampshire. Their argument is that, they'll get all the delegates after that.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of the situation is if Hillary Clinton loses both Iowa and New Hampshire, and again, it's still far away, I mean, pure panic will reign over the Democratic Party.
What I love about that, though, is that, someone like Hillary Clinton potentially losing, let's say, Iowa or New Hampshire both, and it sets off this panic, and certainly the narrative on both sides will be, oh, no, she's doomed. How's she going to win? When on the Republican side, and granted they have a much wider field, you have that same situation that has played out actively in the last couple elections where, in the early states, especially Iowa, but even other states like South Carolina, which chose Newt Gingrich. I mean, these states are not at all predicting who the eventual nominee is going to be. I mean, that's a lot of the argument Jeb Bush is making. That's a lot of the argument Marco Rubio is making.
Totally.
People who are suffering from this rise of these outsiders in a much more sustained and dramatic way in consecutive elections, which hasn't happened on the Democratic side. And yet no one kind of breaks into the same panic and says, well, look at that. You know, Iowa voters didn't choose Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush. They're doomed. It's over. There's no way they'll be able to defeat Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's the kind of...
Yeah, that's right. But for one thing, I mean, the reality is that that's always the case with the Republican side. I mean, Donald Trump and Ben Carson have been leading the polls for months. And so it's sort of a, full-on panic for a few months at a time, if we can call it that. And on the Democratic side, I mean, the thing is that it's Hillary Clinton and it's Bernie Sanders. It's not as if there's someone else. And I think a lot of the Democratic establishment is still pretty uncomfortable with Bernie Sanders, regardless of whether they should be or not. And that's something he's working on. So if there's a perception that Hillary can't do it, then there are a lot of big-time Democrats who will sort of be like, what now?
Right. What's interesting is that when you poll the majority of Americans, now it's not obviously a sizable majority in terms of some overwhelming number of people in the country have shifted this far left, but there's still a majority that actually will back a lot of the proposals that he throws out there. There's a lot, and you have to remember he's an independent. I mean, he's running for the Democratic nomination,
right?
But he certainly has, I think, on a lot of his economic proposals, there's an increasing wave of populism that has taken over the country.
Definitely, and I think if you just put him out there as a set of policies, I think the country at large would be fairly open to a lot of it. I think one of the big issues that Democrats have is if you put him up against a Republican in a general election, how does he fight back when the Republican says this guy's a socialist, period?
Right.
And that's just a big issue.
So who is Hillary Clinton worried about on the Republican side? There's quiet gripings about Marco Rubio, but she tends to go more after the outsiders, not surprisingly, because she loves to associate the party with Donald Trump and Ben Carson.
Exactly.
And she'll still go knock Jeb quite a bit. I mean, who is she really worried about, if anyone?
I mean, I think Rubio is the one that every Democrat is most worried about, just because he hits a lot of the points of being. And there was some issue yesterday over saying this, but he reminds them a lot of Obama.
Yeah.
Because he's this young first-term senator who's exciting and can speak very well on the stump, and has these new ideas, and speaks inspirationally and aspirationally. Other than that, I mean, they still don't like the idea of Jeb being the nominee because he has so much money.
Yeah.
That scares them. And the other one that they're sort of nervous about would be John Kasich, but I think that there's a pretty big perception that he can't really get the nomination.
The John Huntsman of 2016 is what I call him. The guy who would probably be a real threat that his own party won't nominate. It was the same thing with Obama.
Right.
The guy served in the Obama administration.
Right.
Would have been fun to watch the Obama campaign really knock down the guy who served in their administration.
Right.
Gabe Debenedetti, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And good luck to you in your travels to New Hampshire. I may or may not see you soon on the trail myself. You can, of course, follow Gabe on Twitter again at @GDebenedetti and read his work online at Politico.com. We're going to take a short break, and Peter and I will be back with you, so keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
Should I get back?
what do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
You know, I am a huge Larry David fan, beyond. A lot of people are claiming on the internet that they've never seen you and him together in the same room at the same time. So I'm wondering if you can clear the air for us. Are you Larry David? Are you him?
Really? I have to tell.
Yes. The internet.
You realize this will destroy my entire campaign.
I wouldn't do that to you.
It's true, I am.
You are Larry.
I have to, you got to be honest about these things. Is that right with you?
This is the Bill Press Show.
Bernie's got jokes.
First of all, I just want to point out that was a joke. Please don't report that as a fact. I was only joking.
You know,
I'm not Larry David.
SNL, I don't know if you're watching, producers at NBC, but we've got a great Bernie impersonator right here in Peter Ogburn. Larry David was also impeccable.
That was the greatest.
It was so
That was
great.
the greatest thing I think I've ever seen on Saturday Night Live. Because the funny thing was, like, leading up to that SNL, people were sort of already saying, Bernie Sanders is Larry David. And
Yeah.
then here's Larry David as Bernie
I
Sanders.
know. It's
great.
amazing. Although, I mean, Tina Fey as Sarah Palin still ranks high.
Pretty great.
I mean, those two I feel like are the best.
That's pretty great.
They still have not, to my mind, really found a good Obama.
No, I agree with you.
And he's been around for like over
I know.
6 years.
Yeah, they
Come
don't
on,
have a good-
guys.
they don't have a good Obama.
How hard is it? We'll be back after the break with Jonathan Swan of The Hill, so stay tuned and keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
Thank you, sir.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The hardest moments for me is when I'm laying awake in the middle of the night and I'm thinking about all the times I made a pitcher of Kool-Aid with the water, or I boiled a pot of corn or potatoes with the water. Those thoughts just stick with me in the middle of the night, and I feel horrible as a mom that I didn't know that something was wrong, but how could I have known? There's no way I would have known.
The spill at Dan River happened when a drainage pipe that ran underneath an ash basin and dam collapsed, sucking out 6 decades of waste and spewing gunk directly into the river.
My husband and I just kind of looked at each other like, should we be concerned? We live right next to an ash pond, and this was coal ash spilling into the Dan River, and we learned at that point all of the toxins that were included in coal ash
A situation like Dan River, where there was a catastrophic disaster, gets people's attention. But the fact is that these coal ash pits have been leaking and poisoning people's groundwater and the state's surface waters for decades. Coal ash is the residue left behind after coal is burned in a coal-fired power plant. A large coal-fired power plant can burn 10 million tons of coal a year. When the organic matter in the coal is burned away, what's left behind are these trace minerals, things like arsenic, lead, mercury, selenium, and chromium. And these are highly concentrated. The coal ash can have concentrations of these contaminants that are 10 to 100 times greater than the level in the coals themselves.
Coal ash pond number 1 is right behind my house, literally pretty much in my backyard. We were approached by a neighbor who was wanting to have their well tested, and we decided that maybe we should have ours tested as well. They found hexavalent chromium at 4.5 parts per billion.
So in talking to the residents, we have discovered anecdotal evidence of an extraordinary number of cancers for this fairly small community.
Some of us in the community got together. We started kind of talking about all the cancer that we've seen in some of our family friends in this community. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of around 70 names. So we had some help from our river keepers putting a map together. And it was a little shocking to see it. You know, I still have a hard time looking at it.
Technically, EPA has not regulated coal ash as a hazardous waste, but it is undeniable that coal ash contains many, many hazardous substances that are hazardous, in fact, to people and the environment. And the only reason they have not been regulated as such is because of intense lobbying efforts by the coal industry and its allies.
A lot of these chemicals are simple elements, but when you find them at the levels that they exist in around coal ash ponds, then you're starting to talk about cancer, brain tumors, you're talking about birth defects, developmental problems, neurotoxicity.
We began to look at legal options, cases that we could bring in court to protect communities and their citizens from these toxic leaking time bombs. In 2002, North Carolina enacted a public financing mechanism for judicial elections. This kept private money out of judicial elections.
The repeal of the public financing program in judicial elections in North Carolina creates a dangerous precedent for all, and it gives corporate polluters and other special interests the opportunity to elect the judges that they want. And this is important for us all. Everyone should care about this, because when you think about the fact that the state and the federal government have basically abdicated their responsibility to regulate these issues, the state courts are the last stopgap.
I think this is no longer a problem that's going to go under the radar. It has been exposed, and I am confident that we will ultimately, with the facts, win out and ensure that we have protected waterways.
And so this is something that we all should care about. If we're worried about the water we drink and the air we breathe, we have to be concerned about money in judicial elections.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Hour. Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Top of the hour, just after 8 a.m. And Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, here taking you through the last hour of this Tuesday morning. Almost there already, Peter.
We're almost there.
We're
Doing
almost-
a heck of a job. I mean that in the good way, not in the George W. Bush, Michael Brown way. Heck of a job. You're
Heck of
doing
a-
an actual heck
Never
of a job.
forget. Reference to Katrina for those of you who did.
Never forget.
Peter Ogburn, though, our executive producer, has been with me, as has Jamie Benson running the board. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
And almost good day. I mean, not
We're
quite,
getting
but for
there.
people like us who've been up since like 4 in the morning, or if not earlier. Ray Rogers has been screening your calls, so keep on calling us at 866-55-PRESS. And of course, Cyprian Bolding is our video operator, making us all look good on camera. Joining us now in studio, though, is Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for The Hill. Morning.
Morning,
Good to have you. Fairly new at The Hill, but seems like you're liking it so far. Going well?
I am. I hope they like me.
Yeah.
Sabrina.
I bet they do. You've been covering all the great campaign finance reporting that is so essential, I think, in each election, because it just gets more and more ridiculous, one could say.
We just had Bob Cusack on the show last week, by the way. I mean, I know what a pain in the ass he's got to be to work for. So I know you don't have to say it. I'll say it, but he's just going to...
I worship him. I think he's a wonderful man.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Listen, he wants to keep his job.
I know. I can't.
And Bob
because Bob's here all the time.
Bob's
He's
here all
the
the time.
greatest.
That's why he's allowed to say that,
He's the
by the way.
greatest. He is the
Yeah.
greatest. He's like one of the coolest
It's
guys.
said
I'm glad you're working for him.
as a phrase of endearment. But, we're going to get into all the great stuff you've been covering, donors, campaign finance, how a lot of these candidates are doing in that larger race. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Okay, so we all know that the Titanic sank back in 1912, in April of 1912.
Wait, what? No.
Oh, no, spoiler alert. The Titanic sank. But when it sank, a couple of things survived, right? And they're still kind of floating around out there, pardon the pun, but it's still out there. People can bid on them, and they auction these things off.
Like that jeweled necklace, right?
That big
That's
jeweled
just the
necklace is
movie.
just one of
The
them.
movie
But
version.
earlier this week, there was a biscuit that was on the Titanic that survived the crash and the sinking of the Titanic.
Was it the coating? What helped this biscuit survive?
That's a very good point. It was packaged up in the kitchen, and a lot of the stuff just sort of floated, and it got a little damaged, but it dried out, and it was fine. They put it up for auction earlier this week, and a man in Greece bought it for $23,000. It's like It's no, I hope not. But it's like I'll tweet out a picture from BP Show on Twitter. It looks like a saltine cracker, is what it looks like, right?
No.
Which saltine crackers?
It looks edible. I'm looking at it now.
actually looks edible.
It actually,
Jonathan's gonna eat it.
It looks quite good.
It looks like it's a good shape.
How much would you pay someone to eat that? $23,000.
Yeah, definitely not $23,000. That's for sure. But yeah, there you go. If you really want it, you can have it. How about the University of Mississippi, or Ole Miss? They said yesterday they took down the Confederate flag, or I should say the state flag, which has the Confederate battle emblem on it. They took it down from the school. It's a big, big deal because they've had to sort of work around this Confederate battle flag at football games on the campus there at Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, because they had to make a law that you can't bring sticks into the game. That was the only way people were bringing in flags attached to sticks, a way to get around. So they tried to ban the flag by banning sticks, which hasn't really worked. But they finally said the time has come. getting rid of all this Confederate battle imagery off of the campus, and that starts with the state flag. So
good for them.
It's one step there at the campus, and we'll see if the state itself follows through and maybe changes the actual state flag. We shall see. I think you're right. Tonight's the night, though. Tonight is the night in Kansas City. It is Game 1 of the World Series. Kansas City Royals taking on the New York Mets.
I hope you have something to say here, Sabrina.
I know. We looked at each other.
You guys aren't in the World Series?
No.
I'm Australian, mate.
You've got an excuse.
Yeah.
I grew up in Italy.
Isn't there a rugby championship going on right now?
Yeah, we're doing really well. The World Cup.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See?
Yep.
Jamie.
Damn it, I should have had that story.
Well done,
that
Jamie.
knowledge.
Producer.
Yeah.
I gotta know these things, right, Peter?
No. Wow.
Hey, I didn't know it.
Executive
I'm happy to
producer in
discuss
waiting.
cricket.
Yeah, we can talk
I could
cricket
discuss that,
or
too.
rugby or,
Australia
giant
has-
things that want to kill you. That's what
Australia
Australia's
has ruined
known for.
Team India's prospects in many major series in cricket. That's something you and I could beef about in another place because no one here cares.
Baseball's cricket-ish,
It is.
right? It's
Well,
kind of like cricket.
It's like our shorter version.
Yeah.
Kinda
Anyway, so tonight's Game 1 of the World Series. Mets and the Royals.
I got Mets in 6.
I got Mets in 5.
I got whatever you're not saying.
That's me. That would be smart. That would be smart.
Anything but what you guys just said.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, who you can follow on Twitter at Jonathan V. Swan, you are, as I mentioned before, those stories right there, covering a lot of the campaign finance world in this election.
Yes.
Record spending, I think, always is the case here in America. And Jeb Bush is someone we were talking about a lot this morning because going into this debate especially, a lot of hype around his campaign being in trouble about salary cutbacks, 40%, that was announced last week, shifting some staff from headquarters into these early states. So he convened a donor retreat in Houston, kind of the family and friends of the Bushes. Talk to us a little bit about how that went down.
So this was a long scheduled donor retreat, but it didn't have the sort of pep and the, I guess, momentum that the one in July, which they had at the Bush compound, had. This one was coming off the back of, you mentioned, the staff cuts. Bush is polling pretty badly. He's stuck in single figures, and they're spending a lot of money. I mean, they have been going on the airwaves. His super PAC Right to Rise has spent vastly more money than any other super PAC, and it hasn't really been moving his numbers. So there is a sense in the campaign that they need to shake things up. And I spend most of my time talking to his large donors, so people who write $500,000 checks, some of them $1 million checks they've already written to Right to Rise. They convened about 150 of them in a Houston hotel for 2 days with the Bush family. So both presidents were there, George W. and George H.W. Barbara Bush, the former First Lady. And it was sort of a get back the gang together, but also reassure the gang that things aren't quite so bad and we can turn this around.
And did the gang buy it?
They tell me they do, but I do detect some nervousness when I talk to them. There is a sense that, look, I hope things really do pick up, because most of these guys, a lot of his large donors are old school Republican establishment guys. They funded his brother, they funded his father, and they're trying to make sense of what's going on in this race. They don't understand the Donald Trump appeal, they don't understand the Ben Carson appeal, and they're just hoping that normality returns at some point.
I mean, the normal rules of politics do just seem, so far anyway, just don't apply to this election.
They don't.
And on top of that, I mean, George W. Bush had plenty of faults. He was a good campaigner, and he knew how to run a campaign, or he surrounded himself with people who knew how to run a campaign. Jeb Bush does not have that same political acumen. I mean, he's running a terrible campaign.
But it's bizarre because a lot of his advisors are his brother's advisors.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like hard to understand. You know, I mean, it's the same people. I do think, though, I mean, there's the Donald Trump effect. There's this real frustration with the establishment that's hit a peak. It's gotten worse since it was in 2012, not better. They have themselves in part to blame because they didn't spend the last couple of years trying to tampen that down. In fact, they played into it because they were too afraid of them. We saw that in Congress, and that's got national implications. But, you know, Jonathan, at what point, I mean, you said that they're But, they're willing to stick it out. I mean, we're not at a point where they start defecting, though.
Well, the good thing for Jeb Bush is that they gave him so much money so early. So when you talk to these people, if you've written someone a $1 million check in July, which is like one person I spoke to yesterday, he wrote him a $1 million check in July, right? You're not really going to change your mind because you don't want to feel like you made a really dud investment.
Yeah.
So in a way, the great thing for Jeb Bush is that he banked $103 million in that super PAC. I don't know if you recall, but he went around the country, I won't say pretending, saying that he was still deciding whether he was going to run for president. But he was raising...
Okay, you could say pretending.
He was raising obscene amounts of money for this super PAC. They banked more than 100 million, which was records by mid-year. And this is like, they're all saying, this is our war chest. This will see us through the early primaries. So in a way, I don't think there's a huge risk of defections. I think the bigger problem with Jeb Bush in his fundraising is he's getting all his money from really rich people, very few small donors. And as you know, with hard dollars, campaign dollars, once you max out, once I write you a $2,700 check, that's it. I can't give you any more money. Whereas people like Carson can keep going back to these small donors who are giving $50 and say, hey, next month, can you give me another 50? So it becomes this ongoing payment cycle, which Jeb Bush doesn't have.
Right. I think that's what's fascinating kind of about the outsider phenomenon is it's largely fueled by small donations, except for maybe, Donald Trump, who he's also steamrolling his own campaign. On the Democratic side, you have some of that too. Bernie Sanders largely benefits from smaller donations. It was only after this Benghazi hearing that Hillary Clinton's campaign has said that not only after, but they saw a real uptick in those donations. I'm actually curious because one of the stories that you wrote, first let's listen to this audio because Lindsey Graham is talking about Marco Rubio being a young man in a hurry who hates the Senate. And this is a story that's percolating, and it's a story that also trickled into his donor retreat.
It's like Marco was thinking he was going to go to a rock concert. It was going to be exciting day one. It's like hard work, isn't it?
Patience is a virtue.
But
You do have to be patient.
Barack Obama didn't get that.
No, he was a young man in a hurry.
And Marco Rubio,
young man in a hurry.
They are just alike in that. You served with both of them.
Yes.
Are they not both just alike in that respect?
Well, I think they're very ambitious, which is a good thing. Most people in the Senate are.
Sure, that's
but
good.
the Senate's a wonderful place. Look at Joe Biden.
Jeb Bush circulated some slides at his retreat, or showed two slides likening Marco Rubio to the Republican Obama. This is, something that Lindsey Graham is also doing after Marco Rubio. There was a report that he hates the Senate. He obviously has effectively stopped showing up for the most part. What do you make of this focus within Team Jeb on Marco Rubio?
Well, what's clear, it may not be clear to voters because Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are, at least at this stage, maintaining the facade of civility. But behind the scenes, there is increasingly bitter, I would call it almost viciousness, sort of flying between the two camps. And so at the donor retreat yesterday, the big donors for Jeb Bush was shown a PowerPoint presentation, which, was 45 slides and it clicked through and all the reasons why, it's not so bad and Jeb's going to win. But at about slide 13, it suddenly started taking these really hard shots at Marco Rubio, and it sort of pointed out that all these people who worked with Rubio weren't endorsing him. And then it said, Marco is the GOP Obama, and it went through how they're similar, green senators who worked at universities, and it was pretty rough.
It's pretty rough. It talks about, like you said, the endorsements Jeb has among members of Congress, where Marco Rubio is a sitting senator, being like he doesn't even have endorsements in the Senate, and I've already got 3, and he actually works there. I've got 20 from members of Congress in the House. He's only got a handful. I want to talk about that a little bit more. Let's take a break because I think this is a fascinating kind of thing, and I do think it has a lot to do with donors. People are wondering, why is Jeb doing that? It won't work with the voters. He's not after voters with that message. Jonathan Swan will still be with us, so keep on watching The Bill Press Show. We will be back soon.
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
eye cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for The Hill, is still with us. And of course, I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, your host this morning, filling in for Bill. We were talking about the great world of campaign finance, a hallmark of American elections. We were talking in particular about Jeb and his good friend Marco. They like to refer to themselves as very chummy, but behind the scenes we're not so sure, because Jeb is out there telling donors do not give money to this guy. He is Republican Obama. Now, a lot of the conversation around this, and this is what we're wanting to get into before we took the break, is what is Jeb trying to accomplish? I mean, how is that an effective message? Because voters are going to look at that and say, what, he's like the guy who was elected twice, who has pushed through his agenda regardless of the opposition? I don't think he was talking to voters. I think he was talking to donors. Is that a validation of Rubio emerging as more of a viable alternative? Is there a sense within this donor class that they both are going after, that they should start checking out Marco Rubio?
Well, there's a few things here. One is absolutely they're fishing very much in the same pool. They're both from Florida. A lot of the money that, let's say Jeb Bush didn't run for president, a lot of Jeb's money would have gone to Marco. So there's absolutely a fight over donors. But on a bigger picture, they're both running in the same, I guess you call it a lane, establishment lane of the Republican primary. Marco Rubio, you might remember in 2010, was very much seen as a Tea Party senator. But in this race, he's not seen so much in that lane. Ted Cruz has more got that lane to himself. So they're fighting over the same donors. And what Jeb Bush and his team are trying to tell these donors is, look, don't do this again. We elected this handsome, young, eloquent Obama guy, and it turned out terribly. So stick your money with me, and I'm going to be your good old Republican governor. But as you said, a lot of people are saying, well, that Obama thing for the left turned out pretty well. So,
Yeah. Now, Marco Rubio, his fundraising haul in Q3 was $5.7 million. Originally reported to be $6 million by his campaign. It turned out not to be entirely the exact number. Disappointing or not something to worry about this early? What's his strategy?
Definitely disappointing. To put it in context, Ben Carson raised $20 million. Jeb Bush raised about 13. Ted Cruz raised about the same. Even Carly Fiorina, who was nowhere a few months ago, raised more than Marco Rubio. So it's definitely a problem. The campaign knows it's a problem. They say that fundraising is picked up in October, which makes intuitive sense given he performed well in debates and people are starting to talk about him. He's moving in the polls. But again, we'll have to see where those dollars go.
Yeah, I think it's really going to be a critical kind of quarter for Marco Rubio in particular, because he did spend a lot of his summer fundraising. And it's, we were talking about this in the break, but Scott Walker was also in the race last quarter. He is no longer there. So there's some money that opens up. I hear that the Koch brothers are warming up a little bit.
Well, not the Koch brothers themselves, but this is often the misconception with the Koch brothers. Charles and David Koch, the billionaires from Wichita, haven't spent a cent on anyone, but their network likes Rubio, and their network's going to spend somewhere near $1 billion.
$1 billion network, guys.
Wow.
We'll see if money can buy you an election. It hasn't in the past, but he's a pretty formidable candidate. Thank you so much, Jonathan Swan at The Hill. We'll take a break and be back shortly. Keep watching.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws.
How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
CrimAdvisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada. What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that CrimAdvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but What about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. CrimAdvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
CrimAdvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Help keep all the presidential candidates straight with your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, saving the best for last. My friend Pema Levy joining us now, politics reporter at Mother Jones. You can follow on Twitter at Pema Levy. Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
You know, it's a little unfair when I just call my friends on, but it just so happens that friends like you are also terrific reporters. And, you know, you've obviously now been with Mother Jones for quite a while. Is it coming?
It's almost a year.
Almost a year.
Yeah.
Congrats, Twitter.
Congrats,
Twitter is activated. To be activated.
Congrats.
There's a really low bar for congrats
Twitter powers have been activated.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You continue to hold the job.
Good job. I'm covering the election, which we've been talking about quite a bit this morning, and you have got a piece coming up on Jeb Bush and voting rights. Tell us a little bit about that, because, you know, I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about the politics, not so much the policy.
Yeah, I would love to. So I have a feature in this month's magazine, which is up on the internet today, which is very exciting.
Oh, the interwebs, it's happened.
Yeah, the interwebs, the tubes. And so basically, for a little background, Florida is currently one of 3 states that disenfranchises felons permanently. Most states, after you've served your time and you're out of the criminal justice system, you get to vote again. In Florida, you don't. And in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, in order to get those rights back, you have to personally go to the governor and the cabinet and go before them physically and be like, I've turned my life around. Jeez. I promise I'm going to be good. Can I have my rights back? And this is the right to vote, to serve on a jury, and to run for office. And so what I discovered is that there are transcripts of these hearings. There are
I can only imagine.
They're held 4 times a year in the Capitol building in Tallahassee, and the governor and the cabinet presides over them. And so, hundreds, thousands of people per year would go before Jeb Bush, and currently do before Rick Scott, the current governor. This isn't a system that Bush invented, but it's a system that he oversaw. And so I looked through over 1,000 pages of transcripts of these hearings and sort of saw how Bush ran that system and how he interacted with that system. And it was really interesting. One of the things that a little tidbit I'll share with you that I found really fascinating from the research is that he was, I would say, preoccupied with people's traffic records in terms of like speeding tickets, traffic violations. And if people had too many traffic violations, he wouldn't restore their voting rights.
Sorry, there's a terrible Marco Rubio joke here somewhere, and I'm just going to let it go.
No. It's actually, we can totally embrace that joke. I believe I referenced it in my story.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Jeb Bush is among the growing bipartisan consensus that criminal justice reform, in particular, looking at ways to embrace ways to move away from just incarceration, to move into more of a system where nonviolent drug offenders, at least, have a way back into the workforce, have a way back into living a qualitative life, and that therefore not just falling right back into the system.
Yeah.
So going off of this report, I mean, I guess, to some extent there's been a lot of evolution among a lot of lawmakers. But how does his record square was there anything, because he likes to tout his record actually having reduced recidivism rates and having at least implemented some criminal justice reforms?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question, and I left out probably one of the most important things about this is that felon disenfranchisement disproportionately affects black voters who are disproportionately Democratic. So there's definitely a political element to this. And one of the things that's interesting is that you're right, as the criminal justice reform movement has happened, states have slowly over the past 15 years or so been moving away, sort of softening their felon disenfranchisement laws. Florida is not one of them. Bush actually did make it easier over 8 years for people to get their rights restored. So, he did take steps sort of slowly and with a little bit of a push, but he did actually make it easier ultimately for people to get their rights restored. After him, Governor Christ made it a lot easier and restored a lot more people's rights than Bush did. And then the current governor of Florida, Rick Scott, has basically made it nearly impossible for people to get their rights restored. So he's moved it back.
With an assist, I'm assuming from the Supreme Court's decision too, when it comes to a lot of even though you're talking about felons, I think that in general, there's arguments to be made in some of these states that certain rulings have at least made it difficult now in a lot of Republican-controlled legislatures, or made it easier, I should say, for them to get away with passing all kinds of legislation at a state level, restricting or further restricting people's rights to the ballot box. And you're right, it does disproportionately affect minority voters. But on that Jeb note, it's a big night for him tomorrow in Boulder, Colorado, where he will be taking the stage for the 3rd Republican presidential debate. This one is focused a lot on economic policy.
Yawn.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do we even have to watch, guys?
No, we're going to watch. We're going to totally watch.
Oh, God.
No more 3-hour debates.
No more 3-hour debates. That is the only request. If you are watching, never schedule again, ever, a 3-hour debate. But how important is this night for him? I mean, I've kind of, there are some kind of reports out there that this is do or die. I find that a little overblown.
That seems a little dramatic.
Yeah, it's a little dramatic. But if you've been following his campaign, certainly it hasn't been going as swimmingly as he would like.
It hasn't.
What does he need to accomplish tomorrow night?
That's a good point. I think he needs to look strong. I think it's been I don't think it's, do or die, but I think his campaign has gotten a lot of bad press recently. Even conservative outlets have been saying, Jeb Bush is done. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the donors. He doesn't have the poll numbers. The timing is wrong. A lot of different reasons. And so I think he kind of just needs to prove to his critics that he's a good candidate.
Yeah, I think he has not risen to the challenge of running for president yet. I don't think he's done one thing that would make people go, okay, we get it now, right? Because there was all this buzz around Jeb getting into the race.
I mean, his outburst in South Carolina was not reflective of where he's. So if you missed it, Jeb Bush was campaigning in South Carolina, and just his frustration was so clear. He just said, I've got cooler things I could be doing.
We're doing a lot of cool things.
I can do a lot of cool things. I don't have to be here. I
could detail my car.
If you want to just, allow for more endless. We got a clip, actually, it turns out. Jamie, roll that clip.
I got a lot of really cool things that I could do other than sit around being miserable, listening to people demonize me and me feeling compelled to demonize them. That is a joke. Elect Trump if you want that.
I could be cleaning the gutters out of my house. I could have gotten a new grill. I drive a Dodge Stratus.
But this is Jeb's...
He probably doesn't know what that is.
No,
this is Jeb's version of tough talk, though. I mean, this is when he's just like...
just the idea of Jeb tough talk, maybe.
But this is what it is, where he's just like, I give up. If you want that, if this is what you're looking for, it's just, name calling and silliness and not seriousness, go elect Donald Trump. Be my guest. I think the only thing is that he said he's miserable. I think that's maybe... I actually don't think that there's, if he doesn't want to sharpen his knives too much at Donald Trump because it only comes back to hurt him. But I think the one thing he can say is, you're going to get a lot of nothing if you elect Donald Trump. I mean, nothing good will come of that. And sorry, I warned you, but miserable. Yeah. I mean, is he miserable? They thought he was running he's a joyful tortoise. Wasn't that the whole thing?
Yeah, he was supposed to.
I can't remember it.
He said he wouldn't run if it wasn't joyful, right?
And now he's miserable?
Yeah. Where's the joy? I think looking at the debate, though, he does have a hard task. I mean, Trump, Carson are the front runners, but I don't think that he considers them his main opponents. You've already talked about on this show. I think he has to look like the better choice in the more establishment lane, and so I think he has to sort of have Rubio in his crosshairs and be looking, to Trump and Carson too, and make sure that, because if he just lets them take over the debate, then he's not going to stand out, and he kind of needs a moment where people go, oh. Right on, Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
Another nailed it moment with Donald Trump. Like that was
so awkward.
Oh, if only we could pull that up and show it to all of you. But I'm sure I hope everyone has seen it. I don't even remember at this point. Oh, it was like a moment where Jeb felt like he has high energy, and it was like, how's that? And then gives Trump a low five. They broed out.
So hard.
It was
by the
so
way.
yeah. His
Aggressive.
face was like, he definitely. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're devolving into now hashing out this moment.
I'm a body language expert. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that. I'm really good at
tell
body
us what
language.
it means.
Yeah.
This is when it's time to take a break. This is clearly when it's time to take a break, and Pema Levy will be back with us. So keep on watching the Bill Press Show, and I promise you after this break, we will not be dissecting Jeb Bush's low five with Donald Trump. I can't promise. Stay tuned.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. the court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
So we're reaching the end of our show soon, but we got a little more time with Pema Levy, who is a politics reporter at Mother Jones. And we were talking about Jeb, we were talking about Rubio, some of the, I guess, more electable, so goes the saying, candidates. There are actually other potentially more electable candidates than Donald Trump and Ben Carson, who have just completely struggled to gain traction. John Kasich, Chris Christie, one might even say Lindsey Graham is more electable. Actually, he probably is more electable at the end of the day than Donald Trump and Ben Carson.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham won't obviously be on the debate stage. He'll be in the undercard debate. John Kasich, Chris Christie, is there, as Jeb struggles, is there a pathway opening up for them? Or is it just highly unlikely that there's really any room in this kind of crowded field?
That's a really good question. In theory, there should be room for them, right?
Right.
I don't know that that's materializing in the polls, although Kasich has sort of bet everything on New Hampshire. And so that could be really interesting. Especially if coming out of Iowa, there's no big winner, and then he makes a really has a really good showing in New Hampshire. I could see that being something important that Jeb has to then struggle with, or Rubio has to struggle with. But yeah, it seems like the Trumps and the Carsons have sucked so much of the oxygen out of the room. There hasn't been a lot left for a lot of those lower tier candidates.
The Kasich thing is interesting because he's got nowhere to go but up, right? Like, he sort of jumped into this thing as as a long shot.
I'm only here because I think Jeb very well might struggle, and he has.
Chris Christie, I think, is the summation of the cautionary tale in politics: is strike when the iron's hot, right? If he had run last time around, I think we'd be talking about Chris Christie in a much more serious way. But I think whatever juice he had is gone, nationally anyway.
Yeah, I guess. It depends on how far would he have gone in 2012, and if he had lost to Obama, which he
maybe would have won, maybe he wouldn't have. But I guess
at
what
least
I'm
he would
saying
have
is,
more.
He would have been a real serious front runner.
He could have been Mitt Romney, I guess.
The only coda to that is that he probably would have lost his re-election as governor at that point.
True.
In New Jersey. So it was he would have put a lot on the line there.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that's a good point. And sometimes I wonder if Mitt Romney's waiting in the wings still. At the end of the day,
who's asking for that though?
America.
Seriously, are there people besides every red-blooded American?
Have you guys talked about his Obamacare, Romneycare thing?
No, but I mean, not this morning, but do go fill everyone in because it was amazing.
It was amazing. So a good friend of Mitt Romney's passed away, and apparently that this friend had been instrumental in convincing Mitt Romney as governor of Massachusetts to issue in healthcare reform, what we call Romneycare. And so for an obituary for his friend, Romney sort of seemed to have let down his guard and sort of said, yeah, if it weren't for my friend Tom, we wouldn't have had Romneycare, and without Romneycare, we wouldn't have Obamacare, and then all these people wouldn't have health insurance. And everyone went like, wait, wasn't that what the last election was all about, and you denied everything that you just said? So that's basically what happened. And then he quickly walked it back and was like, oh, I'm against Obamacare.
Whoops.
It doesn't work. It's not working. Let's repeal it.
It's amazing, like just the verbal gymnastics that these guys play, and I saw that and I was like, so he's running. I mean, it's just one of those moments, but it's so easy. But
I saw it and I immediately felt bad for Tim Pawlenty.
Yeah,
because Tim Pawlenty in the debate tried to go up against Mitt Romney early on in 2011, and he called it Obamacare, and it didn't stick, and that was his thing, and then he just dropped out of the race. But he was right; it was Obamacare.
It was. I mean, that's the thing. But all of these candidates are still running on a repeal and a replace message. Although I said this not a centerpiece. It's remarkable how it's a throwaway line.
Because they know it's a loser.
But
right?
it's still the biggest applause line in the primary, which is just amazing. It's it's not gonna happen, guys. They're not even gonna be talking about it in the general election.
No. I mean, I think it's actually kind of significant that something that has sort of rallied their party for so long is just not sustainable as a position for them ultimately, going forward into the general. It's kind of out.
And kind of one of the untold stories of 2014 that didn't get a lot of attention is they really barely ran on Obamacare, against Obamacare, even in 2014. I mean, early on, there were a few token ads, mostly in the primary when they were trying to fend off Tea Party challenges. But it wasn't, 2014 was no longer litigated over Obamacare in the way 2010 and 2012 were, even though the Supreme Court had not yet ruled at that time.
Yeah, the second time around. Yeah, I mean, it used to be, just try to fit Obamacare as many times as you can into a sentence. And then by the time it got to November 2014, everyone was like, ISIS, border stuff.
Yeah, well, the migrant crisis had happened.
Yeah, well, they conflated that with terrorism.
And ISIS was, and Ebola was a thing. I mean, it was the trifectas when you could work all three.
Right.
ISIS is bringing Ebola from across the U.S.-Mexico border, and it was bam. But, Pema, on that note, Pema Levy with Mother Jones, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Don't forget to follow her on Twitter at Pema Levy, of course, her work, including that great Jeb piece at motherjones.com. We'll be taking a break before signing off, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Like politics? Then like The Bill Press Show on Facebook. This is The Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, friends and neighbors, what do you say? Good morning. Great to see you this morning. This is the Bill Press Show. We're coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., bringing you up to date on all the news of the day, whether it's happening here in our nation's capital, around the country, around the globe. Coming to you live on your local progressive talk radio station, on Free Speech TV, and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV. Events in the nation's capital. Hi, everybody. It's Bill Press. This year marks the 10th anniversary of doing the Bill Press Show, every day covering the news of the day with the nation's top newsmakers, either on the line or in our studio right here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Not only that, I go to the White House briefings every day to get answers to the top questions of the day. Bottom line, if it's happening in Washington, D.C., either at the White House or the Capitol, we are all over it. Every day, we welcome to our studio political leaders and reporters and labor leaders and newsmakers to help us understand the issues of the day. You know, we started out as a radio show only, but over the years, we have branched out to all forms of the new media. So today, we're not just a radio show. We are podcasting, streaming audio, streaming video, and we are simulcast live on Free Speech TV nationwide. Reaching out to 40 million households on Free Speech TV, in addition to hundreds of thousands on local radio stations and online.
AFGE is so proud to be associated with this show and looks forward to being working with Bill and this show for a long time.
Bill Press is the right man at the right time with the right message.
And thanks to the Bill Press Show, we get our message out to thousands and thousands of people every day. Thank you, Bill Press.
The Teamsters are a proud partner with Bill Press on his show, telling the truth about what's going on with working families. Tune in.
Yes, it's been a fun and exciting 10 years so far for the Bill Press Show. We're looking forward to many more with all of you, broadcasting live every morning from the nation's capital.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show. This is the Bill Press Show.
We've made it through yet another show on the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, have had a blast this morning, especially with all of my friends over here. And I mean it when I say friends, Jamie.
Oh. She just doesn't remember your name. She knows that you're her friend.
I know his name.
I'm kidding. I was kidding.
Listen.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Yes. You're the one who was wrong. You didn't even know that Neil Martin existed.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, it's true.
Halloween coming up. What are your kids going to be?
I've got one Deadpool.
Okay.
It's going to be Deadpool, the Marvel comic book character. And I've got another Thor. I got Thor.
Ah.
Magnus is going to be
What
Thor.
about yourself?
I don't dress up, Sabrina. I'm a grown man.
Well, I'm a grown woman, and I dressed up at Igor Volsky's party, and I was a dark angel. I was wearing these black wings, and I had like a lacy top and skirt. And,
it was a great costume.
And Peter walks in and asks me if I'm a butterfly.
It's true.
I've got
there was
this,
someone else that was there.
Dark makeup. And clearly. And then there's someone else.
There was someone else that was dressed as a peacock.
With peacock feathers coming out of her back.
I was like, oh, that's a great butterfly. I thought everybody was dressed as a butterfly.
Basically, Peter must have been on something.
I had a drink or two.
And was just seeing butterflies. Like the same way that dude saw that zombie, you were just seeing butterflies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Sorry.
He apologized, but, I went through all this hard work.
You look fantastic. It was a great costume.
We're out of time, though, but I had a blast, and I will be back soon enough. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. Sabrina Siddiqui signing off from The Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.